No. So it's so funny because I don't see it's factually true that a lot of my stuff is solo authored, but I don't experience myself as a solo author. Meaning, a lot of what I do is like intellectual collaboration, and so I'll go and sit with people, talk with people. For the book, for instance, the institutional courage chapter. So all of the chapters I sent to peer reviewers before it was fully submitted. And one of them was Jorge Delva, who was the dean here at the time. So when I came to look for housing, we sat down for 2 hours and had the chapter in front of us, and then we just talked through organization. You know what I mean? Of like, I'm stuck. I'm like, you're right, it's not working, but I'm trying, but I don't know how. So all that stuff happens relatively often in terms of that like intellectual um, collaboration or intellectual kind of thought process. I think very little is by myself in terms of like me, like everything I've talked about is stuff that I've talked to other people. But curious, so why don't I have more co-authors? One is that I am very efficient, and not everybody like follows through with stuff. And so I'm actually very picky on who I even attempt to collaborate with. And so, because I've been burned, and then like a project will die. You know what I mean? It's like because I can't publish without the person. They were a co-author here, but I can't, And so I'll start collaborations and be like, this thing I care about less, let's see how it goes, and then pull through. And I keep doing my own stuff in on my own in the meantime for that. So a part of it is that I'm anal and picky. A part of it is that I haven't always been in the same space as people who do this kind of work and who have the time to be able to add something that's very clearly in my wheelhouse of cultural betrayal that isn't like you don't have to come over to me because I have this framework for the cultural betrayal stuff, right? Um, so I think that's probably a function of it. But I will say the joy of having co-authors when you get the peer reviews back is like the best, to really be able. And what I do for peer, I don't know how much time we have. I'll say this quickly. What I do for peer review is I'll go through, read it once, with one covering one eye. That's a recommendation from Jennifer Fried, who physically does that cover with one eye. Don't know why it helps, but it does. And then I write a note for each comment. So I'll categorize it easy, easy, medium, 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 hard. And then I'll put like, they didn't read the paper, they're wasting my time. Go back to page 3 to see if it's there, blah, blah, blah. And I go through each one and do that. When I have co-authors, then I can draft my responses how I feel them, and then I can send it to them and say, like, will you read my tone? Because in my head, it wasn't pleasant, but I'm not sure what made it on the page. And so having co-authors who do that with and who you can be frustrated with and excited by. Sometimes peer review goes as it should. Many times does not, for at least for my work. It's often a less often now, but still relatively often a nasty process. And Lisa, to your question about like what's different now in 2025, the peer reviews have gotten worse. I've gotten much more of the what about white people question. I've got, much
Oh,
more of like that old timey stuff has now come back that it was more of a reprieve. It was a good like 2 or 3 years where it still happened but was less often. So there's been an uptick in that kind of
and we're
nonsense.
right about like, well, what about the white comparison group? And yeah,
Yep.
we're there.